I was called a heretic again this week. Someone reacted to one of the little short videos that I posted on TikTok during the week and said, heretic. And I said, why? I said, because you're claiming that salvation is by works. This has often been thrown at me in one way or another, but I don't actually think that's what Swedenborg teaches. He doesn't teach salvation by works. And if you read him, he has this particular term he uses, merit. When he speaks about merit, he's talking about people who believe that they deserve their place in heaven, that what they have done has merited their place in heaven. And he's highly critical of it. But there's something about what Swedenborg writes and the way he expresses it that makes people think that he teaches salvation by works. And I want to talk about that distinction today because it's important. Swedenborg talks about the way that we actually do need to do something. We do have our part in this process, but it is not our part in the process that saves us. So, for example, my preparation of a service and a sermon, should I spend my week doing anything but preparing for a service and then expect the service to be ready on a Sunday morning? Should I? No. I have to put some effort into what I'm doing. I need to plan, I need to put together slides and music, I need to think about what I'm going to say. I need to study it. I need to do a whole raft of things during the course of the week, weeks before a service, to get it ready to the point where I can say something. The difference is, does my effort mean that what I say is inspired or inspiring? Just because I put the effort into something doesn't mean that it's actually worth listening to. And the difference there, that gap, is the Lord, is the work of the Lord. I mentioned my coding exercise, the difficulty I will have with a particular problem that leads me to put it down in frustration, and then overnight the solution is presented to me. And it's remarkable how often that happens. Again, I put the effort in, I'm learning coding, but I'm not the one who actually generates the solution. But does it mean that I should not learn coding? Would I get the result if I did nothing myself? No, I wouldn't. I have something to do to put into the process, which then the Lord infills with something. This is what Swedenborg teaches. Imagine a garden and you leave it alone and expect the garden to grow itself. Will it do anything? Well, it will grow a lot of weeds and a few things might pop up. But we as a gardener, we put the effort into the garden to planting certain things. We might plant a food crop. It's not us that grows the food, but we have to put something into the equation for anything useful to come out. The disciples, when they met the Lord, they're in their boat, they're fishing. They hear the Lord say, cast the net on the right side of the boat. The disciples actually needed to do something. They actually needed to hear what the Lord said and do it. Does that mean they created the miracle? No, it doesn't. But they did have something constructive they had to bring to the process for anything to change. And this is the distinction that Swedenborg makes with this idea. He calls it influx into effort. We have an effort, we have a job, we have an action we have to carry out. The Lord will flow into that. But if we do nothing, we can't expect the Lord just to produce the goods. I was wondering during the week about the idea of natural night and spiritual day. I was just thinking through my process of my coding problem solving. It's when we go to sleep, when the natural mind kind of shuts down and we're not doing so much conscious thinking, that the Lord is able to flow in and present the solution. And I wonder if natural night, in a way, is a kind of a spiritual day. There's that reversal, because that's when we are in a state where we naturally allow thoughts to flow in rather than resisting them. And when we are conscious and active during our daytime, we tend to experience a spiritual night. I mentioned a few weeks ago the book by Reverend William Bruce, a commentary on the Gospel of John. And when he looks at this passage, he made a comparison of the sea that the fishermen were on with the Word and the world. So if you imagine it as speaking about the Word, the way we approach the Word, we read it, but so often don't we approach the Bible with a sense of, I want to find the answer, or I want to prove my attitude is correct. And so I go looking in the Word for all the answers and for all the reasons that prop up my own thinking. That's casting our net on the wrong side of the boat. What the Lord's asking us to do is shut down the mental work. Shut down the thinking that we are doing and just be open and receptive to what is there. And isn't that a much more productive way of reading the Bible? It's a difference between reading it to want to know that I am right, or reading it to learn the truth. That's a big difference. When we go to the world and think about the sea as the world, I was talking with someone during the week about their involvement in the interfaith community. These were new church people, had gone into the interfaith community hoping to sell the doctrine, hoping to convince others of our rightness, how we have such wonderful teachings, which we do, but wanting to go and push that on others. But then casting the net on the right side of the boat, it's more about changing hearts. It's about connecting with people, understanding the way they see the world and how it fits in with my understanding. It's not trying to convince them or win them over to anything other than love, of establishing a relationship. So it's just interesting the way that this story speaks to that issue. Jesus calls the disciples, asks them to cast on the right side of the boat. They catch all of these fish and they bring them to shore. And when they arrive at shore, there is a fire and there is already fish and bread. There's already provision there. And yet Jesus actually asks them to bring the fish to the fire as well, and then they have breakfast. So isn't it just interesting? There's this relationship between our effort, the work we do, the actions we carry out, but that in itself doesn't get all of the way. There's something that the Lord has to bring to this process as well. I just want to finish with two passages which talk about this idea. Towards the very end of Heavenly Secrets, paragraph 10,299, a little section which says this: a person should think, will, and act as if doing so all by himself, yet should attribute to the Lord all his thought of what is true and all his endeavour towards what is good. When this happens, the Lord implants within the person the ability to receive him and influx from him. And then earlier in the work, Heavenly Secrets, Swedenborg talks about his experiences in the spiritual world and meeting different kinds of spirits. And this is what he says. There are certain spirits who during their lifetime, having heard that all good originated in the Lord and that man was unable from himself to perform any good at all, had for these reasons held to a principle of not compelling themselves in anything and of remaining utterly passive. For they had supposed that what they had heard being true, any effort at all made by them was totally ineffectual. They had therefore waited for immediate influx into the effort of their will and had not compelled themselves to do anything good. Indeed, when anything evil had crept in, since they did not feel from within any resistance to it, they had gone so far as to abandon themselves to it, imagining that it was permissible to do so. But those spirits are such that they do not possess, so to speak, any selfhood, and so do not possess any mind of their own, and are therefore among the more useless, for they suffer themselves to be led just as much by the evil as by the good, and suffer much from the evil. But those who have practiced self-compulsion and set themselves against evil and falsity, even though at first they had imagined that did so of themselves or by their own power, but had after that been enlightened to the effect that their effort originated in the Lord, even the smallest of all the impulses of that effort. In the next life, these people cannot be led by evil spirits, but are among the blessed. This shows that a person ought to compel himself to do what is good and to speak what is true. The secrets lying within this is that in so doing, a person has a heavenly proprium bestowed upon him from the Lord. This heavenly proprium is formed within the effort of his thought. But if he does not maintain that effort through self-compulsion, as this appears to be the way it is maintained, he does not by any means do so by abstaining from self-compulsion. There's an interesting comment he makes in the middle of that even though people mistakenly believe they're doing it themselves, yet the Lord can infill that effort. But if we were to stand and just do nothing, nothing would be achieved. So that's the difference. That's Swedenborg's difference. He does not say that our works of themselves save us. They do not. But he doesn't say we do nothing. We have a part to play in this process.